The angel number that appears right before someone leaves your life. You saw a number, the same number over and over, in the days before they disappeared from your life. You probably dismissed it. Logic has a way of doing that, turning something precise into coincidence, something felt into noise. The mind is very good at protecting you from what it isn't ready to understand. Here is what that number was actually doing. Certain angel numbers appear during the final energetic phase of a connection, not to warn you and not to punish you, but because a separation was already in motion beneath the surface. The number was marking the threshold, a boundary between who you were inside that relationship and who you are becoming without it. That is the first layer. But there are 3 more, and the third one, the one almost no one talks about, is the reason the same number keeps appearing even now after they are already gone. There was a moment when you noticed it wasn't random. The number appeared on your phone at 2:22 in the morning, then on a receipt, then on a license plate you passed without trying to look. You weren't searching for it. It was finding you. That is the part that unsettles people most. Not the number itself. The feeling that the number knew where you were. The feeling that something invisible was paying attention. Most people spend days trying to rationalize this away. They tell themselves they're simply noticing it more because they're stressed. They blame confirmation bias, sleep deprivation, emotional overload. And for a while, that explanation almost works. But it doesn't hold. Because the timing is too precise. Because the number appears at the exact moments the person you're losing crosses your mind. Not generally. Not occasionally. Exactly then. That level of precision is not something anxiety manufactures. Angel numbers don't operate through accident. They operate through synchronicity, which means meaningful coincidence, a term Carl Jung used to describe events that carry emotional weight far beyond their statistical probability. The number isn't appearing more. It's appearing in alignment with something that is shifting in your energetic field. And what was shifting during those days was a connection. One that had already begun its quiet unraveling beneath the surface of your daily life. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a slow, steady loosening of something that had once felt permanent. You felt it before you understood it. That low, persistent sense that something was ending. Not a fight, not a crisis, just a slow withdrawal of energy from someone who used to feel close. That sensation, the one you couldn't name yet, was what the number was responding to. It wasn't warning you, it was acknowledging what was already true. There is a difference between those two things, and that difference matters more than it might seem right now. And this is where most people get the meaning wrong. They look at the number and ask what it means about the other person. But the number was never about them. It was always, entirely, about the shift happening inside you. Most people assume angel numbers signal arrivals, new opportunities, new relationships, a beginning that justifies the excitement they feel when they see the sign. That association is real, but it is incomplete. Some of the most significant numbers appear at closings, not to celebrate something coming, but to mark something departing. And the marks left at endings are often deeper than the ones left at beginnings. There is a reason for this. Endings carry enormous energetic weight. When a meaningful connection begins to dissolve, even before either person has consciously acknowledged it, the energetic field around both people becomes unstable. Something that was once woven into the texture of your daily life starts to loosen. And that loosening creates a kind of signal, a vibration that certain numbers are designed to register. Think of it this way. When a structure is under stress, it vibrates differently. The same is true for the invisible patterns that hold relationships together. When the pattern begins to break apart, it resonates at a different frequency, and certain numbers are attuned to exactly that frequency. They are not passive symbols, they are responsive ones. This is not metaphor. Pythagorean numerology, Hermetic tradition, and Kabbalistic thought all share a common premise. Numbers are not symbols invented by humans to describe reality. They are structural properties of reality itself. They are the language in which energetic change expresses itself. Every major transition in the physical world has a numerical signature. Endings are no exception. So when a number begins appearing during the final phase of a connection, it is not coincidence dressed up as meaning. It is the departure itself becoming visible, not emotionally yet, but energetically. The number is the first legible sign of a transition that your conscious mind has not yet fully processed. You saw it before you understood what you were losing, because on some level you already knew. The body knows before the mind does. The energy field knows before the body does. And the numbers appear at that deepest level of knowing. But knowing something energetically and knowing it emotionally are two very different experiences. And the gap between them, that strange suspended period when you sense something is wrong but cannot yet name it, is exactly where these numbers live. That gap has a name, and understanding it changes everything about how you read the signs that appeared during that time. Before someone leaves, they are already leaving, not in actions, not in words, in energy. There is a stage in every significant ending, romantic, familial, friendship, that precedes all visible signs of departure. During this stage, the other person has already made a decision somewhere beneath their conscious awareness. They may not know it yet themselves, but something in them has already begun to disengage. The warmth is still present on the surface, but something underneath it has gone still. You felt this. That is what those days were about. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of a new kind of quiet. Conversations that used to carry weight suddenly felt light in a way that made you uneasy. Moments of closeness that should have felt natural began to feel effortful, like trying to hold water in your hands, like pressing into something that was no longer pressing back. This is what psychologists call emotional withdrawal. But spiritually, it is something more specific. It is the moment when the energetic contract between two people begins to dissolve. Soul contracts, a concept found across Hermetic, Theosophical, and many Eastern spiritual traditions, describe the invisible agreements that bring people into each other's lives for specific purposes. When the purpose has been fulfilled, the contract begins its closure. This closure is not always mutual, and it is almost never conscious. The angel number that appeared during this period was registering that dissolution. It was visible because the energetic shift had already become real, even if the emotional reality of it was still weeks away. The number was not predicting what would happen. It was reporting what had already begun. This is why the timing felt so strange. The number appeared before the ending was visible, before the conversation, before the silence became undeniable. It appeared because on the energetic plane, the ending had already begun. What you were seeing was not a prophecy. It was a reflection of something already in motion. Understanding this shifts the question entirely. The question is no longer why did they leave? The question becomes, what was the connection completing? What did it come to give you, and what did it come to take from you before it reached this point? What did those days, those last quiet days when the number kept appearing, what were they actually asking of you? That question leads somewhere far more important than grief. Not every angel number carries the energetic signature of departure. Some numbers are oriented toward arrival, expansion, alignment. But certain numerical patterns carry a specific resonance with transition, with the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. The difference is not arbitrary. It is encoded in the numerical structure itself. The number most commonly reported in the period directly before a significant loss is 999. In numerology, 9 is the number of completion. It is the final single digit, the one that contains all others before it. It is the accumulation of every prior stage. When it appears in triple form, its frequency is amplified to a level that corresponds to major cyclical endings, not small closings, significant ones. Seeing 9999 repeatedly in the days before someone leaves is not a warning. It is a confirmation. The cycle involving that person in your life has reached its natural terminus. The number is not causing the ending. It is reflecting a completion that was already written into the structure of the connection. The distinction matters. You were not being threatened. You were being informed. But 999 is not the only number that carries this signature. Many people report seeing 111 during periods of departure, and this seems paradoxical because 111 is typically associated with new beginnings. Yet the paradox resolves when you understand that every ending is simultaneously an opening. The 111 that appears before a loss is not pointing to what is arriving. It is pointing to what is being cleared to make that arrival possible. The space is being made before the new thing is named. 333 appears for others. 3 is the number of synthesis, the point at which two opposing forces produce a third outcome. When 333 appears around a departure, it often signals that the relationship served a purpose of transformation. Something in you has already been changed by that connection. Permanently. The number is marking the moment when that transformation is complete enough to carry forward without them. When the lesson has been absorbed deeply enough that the teacher is no longer needed. The number that appeared for you was not random. Its specific pattern carries a message that is more precise than any general spiritual explanation, and that precision matters. Generic meaning is easy to ignore. Precision cannot be dismissed in the same way. Here is the detail that changes everything. The angel number that appeared before someone left your life was not a message about them. It was a message about you. This distinction is subtle, but it restructures the entire experience. It moves the center of gravity from their departure to your transformation. And that shift is not a small one. Most people, when they look back at those numbers, interpret them through the lens of the relationship. They ask, was this a sign they were going to leave? Was it a warning I missed? Could I have done something differently if I had understood it sooner? These questions feel meaningful, but they are all pointing in the wrong direction. These questions assume the number was tracking the other person's choices. It wasn't. Angel numbers are not surveillance tools. They are not reporting on someone else's decisions or someone else's energy. They respond to the field of the person receiving them. Angel numbers respond to the energetic state of the person receiving them. The number appeared because something in your own field was shifting, not because of them. In preparation for life, without them, your energy was already beginning to reorganize itself around a new center of gravity, even while your conscious mind was still holding on. There is a principle in Hermetic philosophy called correspondence. As within, so without. What appears in the external world, including the patterns you notice, is always a reflection of an internal state. The number was appearing because something inside you was already beginning the process of releasing that connection. Not consciously, not willingly, but energetically and structurally. At a level deeper than choice. On some level that precedes thought, you were already preparing, already building the foundation for what comes next, even before you knew the current thing was ending. This is the part that feels both painful and strangely clarifying. Because it means the loss was not something that happened to you without participation. Not in the emotional sense, you were not responsible for their departure. But in the energetic sense, something in you was already moving toward what comes next. Already orienting toward a version of your life that does not include them. The number was the first sign that this reorientation had begun. And that is where the deeper question lives. Not why they left, but what inside you was already ready, even if the rest of you wasn't. That question deserves a real answer. And you are closer to it than you think. The number kept appearing after they left. This is something most people don't expect and don't know how to interpret. They assumed the sign would stop once the thing it was marking had concluded. It didn't. If the number was marking the ending, why does it continue? The question is fair, and the answer reframes everything about what endings actually are. Because grief is not a conclusion. It is a passage. And passages have their own energetic signature, just as thresholds do. The number doesn't stop at the door. It accompanies you through it. When a significant connection ends, the energetic space it occupied doesn't simply close. It remains open for a period, like a room whose furniture has been removed but whose shape still holds the memory of how things were arranged. The walls still carry the imprint. The number appears during this period because the transition is still active. The completion is not yet integrated. The passage is still underway even when the other person is already gone. In Jungian psychology, Grief is understood not merely as sadness but as a process of individuation, of becoming more fully yourself by releasing an identity that was partially defined by the other person. Every significant relationship shapes how you understand yourself. When it ends, part of that self-definition becomes unstable, uncertain. The work of grief is not just emotional. It is structural. You are rebuilding the architecture of who you are. That kind of work takes time, and the numbers mark its progress. The angel number that persists after the departure is marking this rebuilding. It is not keeping the wound open. It is confirming that the work of transformation is still happening, that you have not stopped, that the process, however painful, is moving in a direction. There is a difference between pain that is going somewhere and pain that is simply circling. The numbers are telling you, this is the kind that goes somewhere. Many people mistake this continuation of the sign as a message that the person is coming back. It is not that. The number is not about them anymore, if it ever was. It is about you, and the interior reconstruction that loss always requires. Grief, understood this way, is not the opposite of growth. It is one of its most demanding forms. And the signs that accompany it are not cruelty. They are company. There is a psychological explanation for why repeating numbers appear more vividly during emotional upheaval. And rather than contradicting the spiritual interpretation, it deepens it. The two accounts are not competing. They are describing the same phenomenon from different angles. The human mind under emotional stress enters a state of heightened pattern recognition. This is not a malfunction. It is an ancient survival mechanism, one that evolved precisely for moments of uncertainty and threat. When the environment becomes uncertain, when the stable structures of your daily life begin to shift, the mind begins scanning for signals, for anything that might indicate what comes next, for any pattern that could provide orientation in unfamiliar terrain. It becomes exquisitely sensitive to repetition. This is the same mechanism that makes people notice the same song playing twice in one day after a breakup, or see a particular bird repeatedly after a loss, or feel that a stranger's words were meant specifically for them. The mind is not inventing these occurrences. It is selecting them from the continuous stream of experience because they feel relevant, because they carry the texture of meaning. The selection itself is the message. Carl Jung called this process participation mystique, the way that emotional states cause external events to feel charged with personal significance. The skeptic says this is merely psychology. The mystic says this is precisely how synchronicity operates. The two explanations are not as separate as they appear. Meaning and mechanism are not mutually exclusive. A door can be both wood and an entrance. What matters is this. Whether the mechanism is neurological or energetic, the pattern you noticed during that time was real. The number was there. The frequency was unusual. And the emotional precision of its timing, appearing exactly when your thoughts touched that person, was not manufactured by wishful thinking. It was registered by a mind already primed to receive it. Your mind was already oriented toward transition. And the numbers it selected, from everything available, carried a meaning that your deeper self already recognized. It recognized them because it already knew what was coming. That recognition is not nothing. It is the beginning of understanding what the loss was actually for. Some people are in your life for decades. Others arrive intensely and leave within months. The difference is not about love or compatibility or effort. It is not a measure of how much either person cared. It is about the specific purpose the connection was designed to serve. And purposes, unlike feelings, have natural endpoints. Soul contracts, as described across mystical and metaphysical traditions, are the invisible agreements that bring particular people into your path at particular moments. These agreements are not made consciously. They are made at a level that precedes your current incarnation, or at the deeper strata of the self that most people never directly access. What they produce is unmistakable. The feeling, from very early in a connection, that this person matters in a way you cannot fully explain. Not just emotionally, structurally, like they were placed there. When someone who carries that feeling departs, the grief is rarely proportional to the time spent together. You can mourn someone you knew for 6 months more deeply than someone you knew for 6 years, because what you are mourning is not the duration. You are mourning the completion of a contract whose terms you never fully read. The depth of the loss reflects the depth of the purpose, not the length of the time. The angel number that appeared before their departure was marking the moment the contract reached its final clause. Not because the connection was unimportant, but because it had accomplished what it was structured to accomplish. The growth it came to catalyze had occurred. The mirror it came to hold had shown what it needed to show. The lesson, whether or not you have fully understood it yet, had been delivered. This does not make the ending painless. It was never supposed to be painless. Pain is how the body registers that something real has changed. But it does make it purposeful. And purposeful pain is categorically different from meaningless pain. And purpose, even when it arrives wrapped in loss, is one of the most stabilizing realizations available to a person in the middle of grief. You were not abandoned arbitrarily. The timing was not cruel. Something was completed. And completion, in the language of soul contracts, is not failure. It is fulfillment. The contract didn't break, it finished. Ancient traditions across cultures have used numbers to mark transitions, not as decoration, as structural indicators. The threshold between one state of being and another has always required a symbol, a way of saying clearly and unmistakably, you are leaving one territory and entering another. You are no longer where you were. You are not yet where you are going. You are exactly here, in the space between. The number you saw was a threshold marker, a signal that you were crossing from one phase of your life into the next, not because you chose to, and not because you were ready, but because the crossing had already been initiated by forces deeper than conscious preference. You didn't schedule this transition. It was already underway when the number first appeared. Thresholds are significant in every mystical tradition for a specific reason. They are the most dangerous and most sacred points of any journey. On a threshold, you are neither what you were nor what you will become. You are suspended between two states, holding the old form while the new one is not yet visible. And that suspension, uncomfortable as it is where transformation actually occurs. Not before the threshold, not after it. In the crossing itself. The number appearing at that threshold was not passive, it was functional. It was orienting you toward the crossing even as you resisted understanding what the crossing meant. It was saying, you are here. This is real. Pay attention to what is happening because what is happening is not ordinary. Most crossings go unrecognized. This one was being marked. Many people report a sense of heightened awareness during the period when these numbers appear most intensely. Colors seem more vivid, sounds carry more weight, time feels both slower and more precious. Small moments feel strangely significant. This is not coincidence. This is the perceptual signature of a threshold experience. The mind and body recognize, even when the conscious self does not yet accept, that something irreversible is underway. The irreversibility is not a wound, it is a door, and the number was the first indication that the door had already begun to open. You couldn't close it, but you could, and still can, choose how you walk through it. Every significant loss comes with a specific lesson. Not a generic lesson about impermanence or letting go, though those are real. A precise lesson, specific to you, encoded in the particular nature of that connection and that departure. The lesson is not one size fits all. It was written into the texture of what you shared and what you lost and how. The angel number that appeared during that time was not neutral. Its specific pattern carries a vibrational message that corresponds to the exact nature of what you were being asked to learn. The number was not only marking the ending, it was pointing toward its meaning. If the number was 9999, the lesson is about completion and release, about recognizing when a cycle has reached its natural end and choosing not to extend it artificially. Many people spend enormous energy trying to resurrect connections that have already completed their purpose. Holding on past the point of completion doesn't preserve what was real. It only delays what was already decided. The appearance of 999 is a signal that this particular connection was not one to be held. It was one to be honored, and released with intention. If the number was 111, the lesson is about identity, about who you are becoming, now that you are no longer defined by that relationship. Every significant connection shapes your sense of self in ways that only become visible when it ends. The roles you played, the version of yourself you performed in their presence. The appearance of 111 suggests that the departure was clearing space for a version of yourself that could not fully emerge while that connection remained. Something in you was being compressed. Now it has room. If the number was 333, the lesson is about integration, about taking what the relationship gave you, the growth, the confrontation, the love, the rupture, and weaving it into the ongoing fabric of who you are, not carrying it as grief, not suppressing it as history, carrying it as formation, as material that shaped you and continues to. The number was not random. It was specific to your path, and the lesson it was marking is still available to you, not in spite of the pain, but through it. The lesson was never supposed to be easy to receive. That is why it arrived in this form. The weeks immediately following a significant loss are often when the numbers appear most frequently. This seems counterintuitive. If the number was marking the departure, why does it continue once the departure is complete? Why does the signal intensify exactly when the thing it was announcing has already arrived? Because the departure is not the ending. It is the beginning of the interior work the departure was designed to initiate. The event ends. The transformation has only just started. The days after someone leaves are among the most spiritually active periods a person can experience. The stability that the connection provided, even if that stability was complicated, even if the relationship was painful, has been removed, and in its absence, something deeper becomes available, something that was obscured by the noise of maintaining the connection, by the constant low-level management of another person's presence in your life. When that goes quiet, what was underneath it becomes audible. Many traditions describe loss as a form of stripping. The Sufi concept of fana, annihilation of the ego, describes a process in which the structures that define the limited self are dismantled so that something larger can emerge. The temporary forms of identity fall away, and in that falling, something essential is revealed. This is not a comfortable process, but it is an essential one. And the numbers that appear during this period are markers of that dismantling, evidence that the process is real and that it has direction. They are also reassurances, not promises that the person will return, not signs that everything will quickly resolve into comfort, but indications that the process underway has direction, that what feels like dissolution is actually reorganization, that the disorientation you are experiencing is not emptiness. It is space. Space that is being actively prepared for something that has not yet arrived, but is already in motion. The numbers intensify after departure because the transformation they were marking has entered its most active phase. You are in the middle of becoming something that requires this exact degree of disruption in order to form, and the signs are simply confirming that the becoming is real, that it has not stopped, that you have not stopped. The number that appeared before someone left your life will appear again, not necessarily before another loss, though it may. It will appear again because it is now part of your symbolic vocabulary. Your deeper self has learned to use it as a language. It knows you will recognize it. And recognition, once established, becomes a channel. Understanding how to read that language going forward requires a shift in orientation. Most people approach angel numbers reactively. They see a number and immediately ask, what does this mean? What is about to happen? Who is it about? These questions are natural. They are also the wrong questions. These questions place the number outside yourself, as a message about events, about other people, about futures you cannot control. And while this is understandable, it misses the deeper function of the sign. It turns a mirror into a window and looks through it instead of at it. The more precise question is, what is this number reflecting about my current state? What interior process is so active right now that it is registering as a visible pattern in my external experience? What in me is ready to be seen. When you ask it this way, the number becomes a mirror rather than a prediction, and mirrors, unlike predictions, give you something actionable. They show you where you are, not where you're going, not what someone else is doing, where you are, and where you are is always the only meaningful starting point for where you are going. If you see 9999 again, ask what you are holding on to that has already completed, not what you want to hold, what has already finished its natural form, and what would it look like to release it with intention rather than resistance. If you see 111, ask what new version of yourself is trying to emerge and what is still blocking it. What old identity is taking up space that belongs to something that wants to grow? If you see 333, ask what integration is being called for, what truth you have received that you have not yet allowed to change you, what you already know but haven't yet let yourself live from. The signs are not coming from outside. They are coming from the part of you that already knows what is happening. Learning to read them is learning to listen to yourself at the level where the deepest truth lives. That level was always there. The loss just made it louder. There is a version of you that could not have existed before this loss. That is not consolation. That is structure. It is a fact about how transformation works, not a comfort offered to soften what happened. Every significant departure removes something from your life, but it also removes something from the way you understood yourself. The identity you carried inside that connection, whoever you were when you were with them, the version of yourself that only existed in that specific relational space. That version of you also underwent a transformation when they left. Not a destruction, a revision, a necessary narrowing that made something else possible. The angel number that appeared before and after their departure was tracking this revision. Every appearance was a marker in a process that is still ongoing, because transformation does not conclude with the ending of its catalyst. It continues long after. It works through you in ways that become visible only months or years later, when you look back and can finally see what was being built during the period that only felt like breaking. The person you are becoming because of what you lost is not a person defined by the loss. That is the crucial distinction. Grief is not an identity. It is a passage. And passages end, not by forgetting, not by replacing, but by integration, by allowing the experience to become part of the foundation you are building rather than a wound you are protecting. The scar becomes structure. The absence becomes orientation. The number will continue to appear at key moments, not always at endings, sometimes at alignments, sometimes at beginnings, sometimes simply as confirmation that you are exactly where you are supposed to be, which is a more significant message than it sounds, because most people spend their lives doubting precisely that. The confirmation that you are on your path, even when the path looks nothing like what you expected, is not a small thing. What you saw, in those days before someone left, was not a curse and not a warning. It was a coordinate, a precise mark on the map of your unfolding life, indicating that you were at a threshold, that you were in the middle of something that mattered, that the crossing, as painful as it was real and purposeful and yours. You crossed it. You are still crossing it. And the signs that appear from here forward will continue to reflect that, not the loss, but the becoming. Not what ended, but what is still, quietly and unmistakably, beginning.